now. Okay. So I'm doing an interview with my grandpa, Jim Rodriguez. So basically, we're just going to start the interview with asking, basically where you were born, that kind of thing, a little introductory before how you got to California. So basically, where were you born, and how long did you originally live there before you first came to California?
No, I was born in a city called McKeesport, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Pittsburgh. And so I was born in 1929, right before the Great Recession. My dad had immigrated from Spain, Canary Islands in Spain. Met my mother in McKeesport. He was working in the steel mills, along with a whole bunch of immigrants coming in from Europe, mostly Polish, Italian, German. He's probably one of the few Spaniards. So that's where I was born, and that's where I was raised. Went to elementary school in McKeesport. That was during the Depression in the 30s, so it was tough times. Dad was out of work, and we had to kind of struggle a little bit. But we went on then to I went on to elementary school, then went to high school. I have two sisters that came along the way, and then we both my parents died within 4 or 5 years of each other, and so I had to take over the family, and so put my one sister through college. The other sister didn't want to. Both of them got married, and so once I got them married, I was in my late 20s then. I went back to college then, finished my college. Went to college in Pittsburgh, called Carnegie Tech then. Now it's Carnegie Mellon University, majored in engineering. And that's pretty much the history.
Okay. So then when did you first come to California?
Okay, first came to California in college, in engineering college at Carnegie Mellon. I took ROTC because at that time the Korean War was going on, and so since I had no dependents anymore, I was ripe to go to Korea. So I took ROTC in college, so if I had to go, I would go as an officer. And so finished my college and got my ROTC second lieutenant. Army said that they would not be needing me for probably a year, and so I told all the companies that I interviewed that I would be possibly called if you hired me, but they says okay. A couple of them said okay, a couple didn't. So one company said okay. In the summer times, I had worked at U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh, and so I interviewed a steel company in California, and I interviewed, of course, a whole bunch of other people, and I took the job offer in California because they gave me a plant trip in the middle of the winter, and I fell in love with California, and so I took the job in California right out of college for a company called Kaiser Steel, which no longer exists. And that was my first coming to California.
Okay, what year was that?
That would be about 58.
Around 58. Okay, and did you apply to other places other than California? Other companies?
Yeah. I had half a dozen other offers.
Okay.
Other states.
Other states and everything.
In other fields. One was Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company. Another was a chemical company, Procter & Gamble. So I could have been making soap. But I chose California.
Okay. And why did you choose other than them working with your ROTC and having to go to the military, why did you choose that company over anything else?
Because they had a plant in California.
Because they had a plant in California.
And they were a steel company.
And they were a steel company.
And so that was a good match. I wanted to go to California, and they gave me an offer in California.
Why did you want to go to California?
I just had heard so much about it. was just a great place to live, and it was booming, and so now I was kind of free, and so I just took a chance on California.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just kind of took a chance. What had you heard about California that I guess interested you?
Well, every New Year's Day they have the New Year's Bowl game at Rose Bowl. And so every day the guy would say, "It's a beautiful day in Southern California." And we would see the television. We'd see the Rose Bowl and the sun shining and the palm trees, and so I thought that might be a good place to live.
All right, that looks a little appealing. So then you came to California. You worked there for how long?
Not very long, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Only about 4 or 5 months when the Army then called me up for active duty. And so I left there and went into the Army. I was in the Corps of Engineers, and so I went into a basic training at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and also in Ordnance Corps in New Jersey. So that's where I did my basic training, and then at the end of basic training, it was time to be assigned, and so it turned out that nearby in Washington, the Army was trying to bring in young engineers into the building, the Pentagon building where the Department of Defense was, and so I got chosen to be one of the two officers that were going into the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to work as an officer during my tour in the Army in Washington, D.C. in the Pentagon.
And then how long did you work? Did you eventually come back to California?
Yeah,
How long?
I finished my tour there in Washington, and it was time for me to be discharged. I get put in my 2 years active duty. In the meantime, then of course, working in the Pentagon and working in missiles and rockets, I obviously thought that was a much more exciting field than the steel industry, and so coming out of the Army, then I interviewed resumes in several companies, and I chose General Dynamics again in California to take a job out of the Army. At which time I had married and had 2 young children at that time, and while I was in the Army, and so then all of us transferred to California in the Pomona area.
Okay. And then, so compared to when you first came to California for those first few months, what was your experience then to then when you returned a few years later?
Well, I was obviously a yacht older, 3 or 4 years older, and so and also married with 2 children. So when I first came, I was a bachelor, and I had a couple of buddies that I had gone to college with, had also taken jobs in California. So I'd get with them on weekends, and we would party, and so that was a different attitude than coming here to raise a family. So that would be the contrast.
Was there any difference in the economical culture or like socioeconomical culture, like
not
race,
really.
Politics, anything like that?
Oh, not really, because I was engineering and technically oriented, and so there's no trouble getting a job. That was booming need for engineers at that time. So as far as economics, why I was obviously a college graduate and engineer, and now in aerospace, and so the economics were quite favorable for me and my family.
And then, do you recall any key historical events from the time since you came back to California, since you've been here now, these last however many years it's been?
I mean, historical events since then,
Yes.
till now.
Like, what are like some of the major key historical events I guess have stuck out most to you that have maybe shaped your view of what California?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've been here for over 50 years now, and so I would say that from those days till now, California has transitioned a lot from a very vigorous, technically oriented guided missile industry was very heavy here, and so it's transported now into more of a manufacturing, educational type state, much more progressive in their economics as versus say a conservative type environment. So I would say California's gotten a lot more progressive over the years and has become a different state.
Do you think there's any like historical events that you can really relate to, like maybe like the riots or something like that are like?
Yeah, all those happened. And again, very disconcerting. The riots were just devastating. The Rodney King story, and so the city was in flames during that period. We were not involved at all because we weren't in that part of town. Mm-hmm. So physically it didn't bother us anymore, but certainly psychologically that was a tough time for California in terms of the riots.
What was the most like interesting thing, or the thing that you liked the most about California once you were settled here for a while? Like, what did you like, hobbies or things that you did or that kind of?
Yeah. Okay. I would say that obviously the weather and the climate was the major draw, mm-hmm. And the opportunity for a lot of work, and so that was what brought us here, and that's what kept us here. And so during that time, that period, I had 3 children, and they all grew up. They all went to college here in California. One graduated from USC, one graduated from Stanford, and one graduated from UCLA. So I have 3 of the Pac-12 covered. Those 3 children have resulted in 9 grandchildren, and they're scattered pretty much all over California. I don't think anybody's left California. So that would be the history of my family as my family grew into 3 children with 9 grandchildren.
Yeah, it's like interesting. Like, you came to California, and then all the siblings, all your children have still stayed, and then all their children have also still stayed in California. So like, there's a big draw as well.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah, all 3 have stayed. All 3 of my children have stayed in California. 2 in Northern California, 1 in Southern California, and they're scattered all over California at this point in time. And although one of the grandchildren is up in Washington State, but still West Coast.
Right.
Yeah.
Still pretty all close to everything.
Mm-hmm.
How has living in California, I guess, shaped the person that you are now, or what do you see were the biggest influence to right now, like you live by the beach, so that that.
Yeah, I'm retired now.
Retired.
And so I'm in a retirement home. It's right on the ocean, and so really tough.
Yeah, so from my view, it's just shaped how your lifestyle is, where you move, it's affected you. You wouldn't probably move into the inner city or something like that because you've been living by the coast.
Yeah. My whole experience has been in the west side of California. Although during this stint, as my family was raised, I switched from engineering into real estate. Mm-hmm. I changed careers, and so. Selling and involved in commercial real estate mm-hmm. became my career, and so having moved now into real estate, I began to acquire some properties, and that helped a lot financially. As California grew, the value of real estate grew, and so my assets grew also.
So yeah, that's probably how one way California's really affected you, like with your employment, basically. So
Yes.
like your job choices. Originally, you came here for like the aerospace and technology job opportunities, and then California, as it was growing in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, the real estate boom and boom kind of happened, and then therefore that also worked with
Right,
you as well.
very good. Yeah,
Right.
that's a good summary. Yeah.
Okay, so that's like pretty. So the most significant ways it seems like California has like affected you is one, economically with the job opportunities that it brought or that were here that you came for,
Yep.
I guess, and then also with like its natural environmental like kind of things, like where it's geographically placed on the coast, it has good weather, a lot of things to do, that kind of thing as well.
Mm-hmm. And that seems to have carried through with the children, since all of them are either in California or on the West Coast. Yeah.
So then, yeah, it's kind of followed through. Okay, let's see. Is there anything, I guess, about your experience to California that you'd like to add so far? Anything that like I haven't touched on, or that you think has been a significant factor in your life here?
I would say that, as we said a little bit earlier, California has advanced considerably. At the time I came, Los Angeles was probably 1.5 million or so. Now it's, if you count the county and so forth, it's probably 4 million. So there's been a tremendous growth here, and with that growth has come a lot of growth problems. We got a real serious homeless problem here. People, for the same reasons I came, I guess the homeless come here.
Right.
And so Los Angeles County has a very severe homeless problem. And so that's, I guess that's the bad side of having a good climate. But in general, the state has gotten a lot more liberal, absolutely, no question. Moving away from more conservative type thinking, as I tend to be conservative. And so I would say that it's grown, very much liberal, and I'm conservative, so there's a gap there.
Maybe a little biased.
Yeah, a little biased.
Okay. Yeah, so like when you first came here, I guess it sounds like there wasn't as bad as the homeless problem as there is now.
Yes. Oh no, nowhere near the homeless problem that we have today. I hear estimates, close to 100,000 homeless people in the area. That's a lot of people.
And did you see a point in time, like was it a slow increase? Did you just see it slowly build up, or what do you think?
Oh, it was cyclic. As with anything, California would have little economic dips, economic cycle dips. But it because it was California, because it was so well located and had such diverse talents, not only in the engineering industry and construction, but also in the movie industry, the computer industry, and so there were periodic swings. But after each dip, the next peak would be higher. So the trend has always been upward. In the last few years, I would say the trend has flattened in the last few years. But for the majority of that time, the slope has been constantly upward, even though there are cyclic parts of the progression.
Have you noticed any changes in like the diversity of like the races or anything since you first arrived here?
Well, I would say the biggest diversity in that area would be the influx of Latin American, Spanish American people into Southern California. Been a tremendous influx of folks coming in, and that's been a large part of the last few years. Have been a large part of the growth, and most of those folks have contributed, I think, very much so to our base in California. they've opened businesses. They've taken over quite a few of the lower and middle income jobs. A lot of them have gone into business, and of course, in just the last few recent years, we've had an influx of undocumented immigrants from Latin America, and that has posed a problem because they came here for different reasons, I think, than the original ones were. They came here because they loved it. They loved this country. They wanted an opportunity to grow, and their kids have gone to college and so forth. So this new bunch coming in tends to be, I think, maybe not quite as motivated.
Right.
But that's a personal opinion.
A little different.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. And what do you think? If there's anything else that you've seen that's changed drastically since you first here to like now in 2019, is there any other things that you can think of? Or?
Well, the biggest and most drastic change has been the increase in population.
Okay.
I think I mentioned alluded to earlier, we had gone from metropolitan area of a couple of million to a metropolitan area now. If you count Southern California, we're probably getting close to 8 or 10 million people. So there's been tremendous growth, and so the area has the infrastructure has had trouble keeping up as far as roads and also as far as housing. The housing kept getting and keeps getting more and more expensive and squeezing out a lot of the lower income people as far as buying. Back when I first started, you could get into a place with 10% down, and now it takes 40-50% down. There's still a few FHA type low interest programs, but nowhere near enough to meet the demand. So the demand is increased tremendously to the point where it's exceeded the supply in both housing, I think, and maybe even higher level jobs.
Okay. So the influx of population is a huge thing that you've noticed.
Right. Tremendous influx. Yeah.
Cool. That pretty much sums it up for all the questions I have. Do you have anything else, or?
I would say just to generalize, as far as I'm concerned, it's been a tremendously great program in California here. We've grown, we've prospered, we've become a very, very force in the universe. I think our economy is larger in California than the majority of countries in the world. So to that degree, yes. I'm very happy with that. I'm very happy with the progress we've made, and my children. That all three of them have progressed in their specific fields. One of my three went into real estate and has done very well. Another one went into computer programming and had their own company, and the third one went into I guess you would call it the legal field. She had attended Stanford, and she met her husband there at Stanford, and so he was an attorney, and so their movement has been in the legal profession, and again spectacular growth in the legal profession. He specializes in employment law. My one daughter specializes in software and printing software that kind of starts with a big roll of paper on one end, and out the other end comes a book, and so it takes all kind of computer programming. So that's been her field, and of course my son has gone into real estate and has grown economically also with the real estate group. So all three have been in a good growth situation, which is, again, I hope it hasn't flattened too much yet.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
That's everything. Thank you.